Hello, my name is Maureen Brennan. I'm a technical advisor for the Federal and State Grants Unit here at the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority. This is one of a series of short webinars that we've put together and posted alongside the R3 Notice of Funding Opportunity on March 1st, 2024. The idea behind this series is to give you applicants some insight into the authority grant process and to highlight some issues that are important for grantees to incorporate into their grant programs. So let's get started talking about the authority agreement process. We're going to talk about 4 different things in this brief webinar. We're going to talk about what happens when a grant award is approved. We're going to talk briefly about the elements of GATA compliance. We're going to talk about the grant review and approval process and grant execution. So, as you know, applications that are submitted to a NOFO are subject to the merit-based review process, where we form teams of reviewers who independently score each application. Those scores are combined, and then those scores are ranked to identify the highest scoring applicants. Those applicants then are recommended to the Authority Budget Committee for funding. When those recommendations are approved, then each grant is assigned to an authority grant staff, a grant specialist. Now, while the applications are being collected through the online Amplifund system, these grant agreements will not be created in Amplifund and they will not be monitored in Amplifund. We'll use an offline system for the agreement negotiation and monitoring. But you do need to apply through the Amplifund system. As I said, assigned to a grant, and they're really important because they are your basic contact to the authority, and they will guide you through the grant negotiation process, and they'll be monitoring your implementation of the program. So your grant specialist will use the Amplifund application materials to develop your grant agreement. They'll review the application materials and assure that your agency is in compliance with GATA. So what does GATA compliance mean? These are some of the elements of GATA compliance. First, that you're registered in the GATA portal, that your agency has a unique entity identity number, the UEI number, that your registration with sam.gov is current. If you're a nonprofit agency, they'll assure that your Secretary of State registration is in good standing and that you're not on the Illinois no-pay list. Finally, they're going to make sure that you have completed the internal control questionnaire or ICQ in the GATA portal, and you have elected an indirect cost rate. So it's your grant specialist's responsibility to help walk you through this agreement approval process. So they're going to be reviewing your materials and then working with you to make any necessary revisions or corrections to those materials so that your agreement can be executed and program activity can begin. Some of the things that they're going to look at, they're going to make sure that your materials are complete, that your materials are consistent across program description and budget, so that everything that the activities that you have described conform to the budget, that there's no items in your budget, for instance, that weren't referenced in your program narrative, that your materials clearly articulate the program activity and the related costs, and that your materials conform to the cost principles and to the R3 program guidelines. So they're going to be looking specifically at the NOFO to make sure that what you have described as your activities are within the guidelines of that NOFO. And the cost principles are the two CFR federal financial guidelines that the state adopted when they passed the Grant Accountability and Transparency Act. So all of our grants conform to these two CFR cost principles. Here's a list of just some of the most common changes that are required as we go through this review and approval process. Your grant specialist may ask you to clarify some grant activity, to further explain it or to expand upon it so that we have a really clear picture of what the proposed program is going to do. We may ask you to clarify the need for some elements of the budget and to describe how those budget items will be used to support the program. We may ask you to clarify how the cost projections were developed. You know, where did you come up with these estimates for the different items in your budget? And finally, we're going to make sure that you specify the basis of any indirect costs that you intend to charge to the agreement. So after you've worked with your grant specialist and resolved any issues that have arisen in their review of your materials, then they're going to pass the whole agreement package over to our fiscal and legal offices for their review. And they're going to follow a similar process, but it's best to have their perspectives in reviewing the materials so that we can make sure that any issues that arise are dealt with before the agreement is executed. After we have secured the fiscal and legal approvals, then your grant specialist will notify you that you need to accept the notice of state award in the GATA portal. And then they're going to send you electronically the actual grant agreement, which you will execute. You're going to sign electronically and send it back to your grant specialist. When they receive your signed grant agreement, it's going to go back to legal for one final review. And once we have their approval, then it's sent over to our executive director for execution. You may be wondering how long all of these steps take. Our goal is to move agreements from the announcement of the award to the execution of the agreement within 60 days. You can help us meet that deadline by making sure when you develop your application that your activities and budgeted costs are allowable. They're within the R3 program guidelines and the 2 CFR 200 cost principles. And you can always help us make that deadline by providing timely responses to your grant specialist when there are issues that need to be resolved in the negotiation phase. So that's a quick look at the authority agreement process. Here's the full list of the R3 technical assistance recordings we're making available regarding this NOFO. If you have any questions regarding the content of this recording or any of the recordings or regarding the NOFO, I encourage you to submit a question through the NOFO Q&A. We do post both the questions and the answers to the Q&A. We post them regularly on the NOFO website. Thanks for joining me today.